practicing with ChatGPT is an environment that can be really safe. No one's making fun of you. So you can ask the questions. You can be quote unquote wrong. You can, all the things that you may not feel comfortable doing in front of people. ChatGPT can be that vehicle and that way to do that.
And welcome to the Heart Leader Podcast, where we are aligning our heart and our mind. I am your host, Amber, and today I am here with Austin to kick off the month where we are focused on compassion. And we're going to take a little different spin this month, and we're going to focus on all of this new AI talk and how these chatbots and this AI tech can actually help us dive deeper into this heart leader attribute of compassion. What can it do for us? And is AI the solution for everything that ails us? We kind of want to talk about that and see just how far we can take this tech. So, Austin, I know you've been really diving into this whole AI technology, and we use it a lot now in the things that we're generating, and we found it to be highly useful. But it is a divisive topic these days. It's another thing where it seems like we're on opposite poles as just people. Either these chatbots and this AI tech is a wonderful thing, or it's what's going to take our society down. So we want to stand kind of in the middle and talk about it, especially with things like self-help. So since you've done a lot of research and you really know the ins and the outs, can you talk about what you found to be both the positives and maybe the not so positives of the AI tech?
Absolutely. So far for me, the positives have been amazing and far outweigh the negatives. And so, but just it really depends on how you're training the AI and how you connect with it and talk with it. And I know we've sat and really focused on, okay, before we even engaged in utilizing AI for our organization, for ourselves, it was really taking that time and that intention to initiate the compassion, initiate the love, initiate the connection, and just train it on, hey, this is how we desire to speak and to be spoken to. This is how Suivera as an organization connects with people. We use compassion, empathy, connection, and all the attributes of being a heart leader as our main focus point and intention in our communication.
Yeah.
So ChatGPT or any AI situation that you might be using with those parameters help us do blank.
Yes.
Right. And the key is to reinforce that too. And anytime we get like a really, really great thing back, it's, hey, great job. This is awesome. Just like I would talk to a person. And it just really amplifies that love and that connection, even though it may not be the same love I would receive from you or another person. I still feel like it's there in many ways. Just a different feeling, a different energy behind it. And so with that said, it's been really helpful because it really has allowed us to, like, I can do 10 days of work in one day now because of that, because it really jumpstarts and helps move things forward. I mean, we've even created whole life coaching plans, tested different things out like that it's pretty amazing what you can do. The downside to me so far, and I've heard negative things, I've heard not so great things. I have not personally experienced that, so I can't speak to that. The only negative that I found is sometimes it pulls information that isn't correct.
Yes.
And so it's doing its best, but in the end, it's kind of like the internet in the 90s, right? It was good, had a lot of potential, but it's nowhere near what it is today. And so that's kind of where AI is. There's still mishaps and things that it's like, hey, utilizing this information, please fill in the blanks, and it will just be wrong. And it might be factual information you can look up, and that's incorrect. So you really have to be sure what you can't just, blindly copy and paste.
Correct. And so you can't rely solely on whatever chatbot or whatever AI function you're utilizing, you still need to do your due diligence, which is actually a good thing, because becoming so reliant on any tool takes away your skill. And where I find there's a lot of benefit is it's making me get better at my own communication. What I do to prompt, and I'll use ChatGPT because it's the one that I utilize the most. But in order to get what I desire back from ChatGPT, I have to be very clear about the prompts that I'm putting into ChatGPT. And so I have to really think about, all right, what is it that I'm asking? And the better I get at my ask, the better the information that I get back from my ask. Well, that's the same for the communication with a person. If I desire something from you, the more clear I am with my ask, the more clear and able you are to provide me with what I've asked for. And I feel like when we're talking about a subject like compassion, that's a beautiful thing, because in a way, that's teaching compassion.
Mm-hmm.
If I desire to be compassionate to you, then part of compassion is clarity in communication, right?
Nice.
Oftentimes, we have whole strings of misunderstandings and miscommunications that come just due to lack of clarity. Not that we're not on the same page. We're just not being clear about being on the same page. Already, learning how to enter prompts has helped me learn how to be more clear and concise in my communication. And that has really nothing to do with the data that comes back from ChatGPT. It has everything to do with me learning a skill in order to be effective with ChatGPT. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, it does. I'd like to circle back, but I first want to start with what you mentioned is not being so reliant on a tool. And I think that's good across the board. Even if we had people doing this work instead of ChatGPT, we don't want to be so reliant and blindly blindly take the work. It's important to do double check, do due diligence, and regardless of whether it's a person or a bot. That is. So I'm really glad you brought that up, because I think that kind of gets lost a little bit. It's just like, because it is amazing. I mean, when you see it just put all this information in a matter of seconds, just like, oh my gosh. And you could scan it and it could be pretty on point. And so it makes it easy to be like, oh, let me just copy paste this. But no, it's important to double check all the work, just like you would anyone else.
And I want to give a shout out to like my previous employment life as a quality analyst and really double checking quality of things, because that gave me the skill to understand that no matter how good someone or something is, it's not speaking to their skill set. It's speaking to the fact that, there are flaws built into any system. Yeah. So understand that all things are flawed in certain points. So just be willing to accept that as part of the given and move on. Like, double check, move on. It's okay.
Agreed. And yeah, I mean, this tool for self-help, I feel like, is really interesting, because with the correct prompts, I mean, even just exploring it yourself for personal like self-help, and I mean that literally, not self-help for other people, but self-help actually for yourself, right? You were saying practicing with ChatGPT is an environment that can be really safe. No one's making fun of you. So you can ask the questions. You can be quote unquote wrong. You can, all the things that you may not feel comfortable doing in front of people. ChatGPT can be that vehicle and that way to do that. And unintentionally, that's very compassionate in and of itself. And so we can utilize that, and we can gain our skills, acquire skills of asking the correct questions, which if we can get better at asking questions to ChatGPT, then we can start doing our own better questions to ourselves for inner reflection. Yeah. And so the more that we do that, then it becomes kind of the symbiotic relationship. And if you ask it to approach it as, for example, you're the world's best self-help coach. Like you put that first, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you say, okay, here are the things I'm struggling with. With compassion, empathy, and a connective approach, how would you help me? Just even that alone could be an incredible start to understanding and getting you on board. Maybe if you just don't feel comfortable talking to someone yet. And so you can get yourself moving. And at the point that maybe you're like, hey, this has been great. I've moved a lot, but I really need someone who is not just pulling data, but someone who can really connect with me and see my potential and connect with that potential and help me get there. Then that's where a transformational coach could really come into play. So it's a beautiful next step for someone who needs this type of help and just doesn't know where to go.
Yeah. And even the tool will say that it is not a substitute for human interaction. And I found that to be amazing. There's limitations. And that's one of the questions I want to talk about, because there's ethical implications and they get brought forward as one of the reasons to not use the tool.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about using an AI tool as a means to dispense life coaching or to track progress against goals for any kind of coaching or counseling, there are questions that have been brought up surrounding that. So I have my perspectives on it, but I would love to hear yours, especially around something like compassion, because as a coach, as a minister, there's a level of connection and compassion that gets brought in to that process, that holding space and listening to someone as they are offering, this is what I'm navigating in my life. How do I navigate this? That a bot is not going to be able to offer. So given what you just put forward, that someone could use this as a first step, how, especially in the area of compassion, would a bot be able to offer compassion that a coach would? Because there are a lot of people in the field who are up in arms at the prospect that anyone would offer that a bot could be part of the process or the tool.
Right. Well, first and foremost, the bot isn't going to interrupt you. So I would say that's one of the top.
I would hope a good life coach wouldn't either, but
we would hope. So that to me is a really good standpoint. No interruptions. And then also listening. It's not going to respond until you first share your message. So you will be able to actually speak whatever it is or write down or type really. Maybe eventually it'll get into some kind of voice activation in some way. But for purposes of this, let's just use ChatGPT as the platform.
And we're going to do that throughout because ChatGPT is the one we're most familiar with. And as far as I'm concerned, I will only speak from a place of experience and knowing and not from a place of guessing.
Exactly. So I really feel that being able to kind of type out your response and ChatGPT waiting until you're complete to actually give an answer, and then even the opportunity you can edit and then resubmit and then get more different information. That's hard to do in a communication. A lot of people kind of want to either jump to providing an answer without fully listening, or not holding the space long enough for a full question to be asked. So unintentional compassion, I would say yes, that is to me would fall under that in a really unique way. Like you're saying, it's not a person. It isn't like actively holding space and creating a heart-to-heart connection like maybe a really quality transformational coach would, to seek to understand and really connect on that human level. But I really feel like there's a lot of value in practicing that, because in some ways we can have our thoughts, right? We can have our perspectives and we hear them in our head, and that's one thing. But when we hear them out loud, it kind of can be a completely different thing. And we may even hear it, and then as we're saying it out loud, we're like, oh, I don't actually feel that way. Like maybe I need to rework that. And so ChatGPT could be a tool to kind of be the bridge between that,
Yes.
which is really unique as well. And so to me, that's another form of compassion where you won't be judged by what you say. It may respond back saying, I will not, speak in that manner, or I will not respond in that way, or, there might be limitations, but you're not going to get a judgment back. Like, it's not going to laugh at you for having a thought or a perspective like maybe a person would. So it's kind of that opportunity to, that non-judgment to me is another form of compassion that I feel that whether it's intended by those who created it or unintended, I feel like that's still the experience that is given.
I would, from my perspective, and I would say that it's a great entry tool for someone who is uncertain about a life coach or traditional therapy, or maybe doesn't have insurance or the avenue to get it. To me, everyone deserves to have some way to get support.
Mm-hmm.
And not everyone has been gifted that opportunity. Either the cost of having a coach has not been afforded to them, like that's out of their price range, or they don't have insurance that gets them traditional therapy. And so this gives everyone an opportunity to at least have the entry point to create a structured plan for themselves. Because as you've often said this, it is not something we're taught right out of the gate in our primary school situations. How do we create a plan for our mental, emotional health? How do we create a structure for the mental, emotional that blends in with our physical health? So, utilizing this tool, you can type in prompts that will not only help you create that tool, but it will help you track your progress throughout utilizing the plan that you've created. So it gives you the structure and it helps you track your progress. Is that all that a coach does? Is that all that a therapist does? Is that all that a counselor does? No, it is not. That is one of the many things that a professional will help you do. But at least it gives you that entry point into understanding what that coach, that therapist, that counselor, that professional individual will do to support you. And you have that first thing that you can go out and feel empowered with. And if that isn't compassion, if I, as a coach and a therapist, don't desire that for every person on this planet, then I am lacking compassion.
Mm-hmm.
And I sincerely desire everyone to be empowered to heal, to thrive, to strive forward and find what they desire.
Mm-hmm.
And I really do feel like this gives that opportunity for those who are seeking it.
It's even an opportunity for maintenance too. If you have done a lot of work and you want a tool to kind of help you, and maybe you don't, maybe you've really spent a lot of time in self-reflection and had a lot of coaching, and you just need this thing, need a way, a kind of a non-biased, non-judgmental approach to tracking because you know what you need. And yes, this might be a great free way to provide that tracking. And I think that's pretty cool too. So it's not just if you've never done this before, here's the tool. It's also, hey, here's a great maintenance tool moving forward. But I think either way, cutting someone else out may not be the best. I do feel that there will be some inherent limitation to any type of transformation when there's not another person.
Yeah, when there's not
involved in some way. And that's just because, just like anything, you take golf, like you can learn on YouTube and you can watch a bunch of videos and you can probably get pretty good. But if you want to take it really to the next level and really get far, you're going to need to work with someone.
Yeah.
The ChatGPT just won't be able to, at least right now, can't see your swing, or, or maybe one of them does. It's changing every day, but
yeah,
But the point was more when you can talk to someone, at least you might be able, this tool can help you have a more refined perspective to be able to effectively communicate to your coach what you need and therefore receive back what you're looking for.
Now let's talk about the safety of it. That's another question we get talked to a lot about because, again, we have both sides of this. We have people who are very excited about the prospect of what this means. And there are people who are very afraid of what it could mean, especially if you're putting in information about personal growth and development and you're creating a plan and you're putting in personal information around those growth opportunities. How much of this then could be tied to your personal identity and then shared out to other companies, other individuals? How much could be data mined and those type of activities, which I think is a very valid concern and a very valid question. And so where do you feel there's like this balance between giving enough to get a good solid outline of a plan, but not giving so much that you feel like you're exposing your personal information to a point where if there ever was data mining, you're giving too much?
I feel like that is the balance. You just, in the question, kind of answered it. And that's going to be different for every person. There are definitely going to be people who really don't care at all. They're happy giving all of their information. Not maybe happy is not the right term, but it's just they don't mind. There's going to be some people who don't want to give anything. So that's going to be tough. But I do feel like what you just mentioned, finding that halfway in between where it's just enough information. An example could be if you are flowing through some emotional standpoints that are deeply maybe scarring or deeply hurting, and you're attempting to pull yourself out of that, just asking from a high level, what would someone do who is looking to create a positive mental mindset and create emotional clarity to help them overcome pain and live a life of happiness and fulfillment? Okay, well, that's enough information to provide data sets for ChatGPT, for example, to pull information off the internet of actual results that people, whether it's case studies or just data out there, blogs, etc., to give some sort of concept in terms of return back to help you achieve that without having to give away all of your secrets, all your deepest understandings, because honestly, if it's that deep, it may be really even difficult to even voice. So you may not even be able to voice it all because you don't even fully understand it yet. And that's okay. That's not what it's not. Doing deep dive and self-reflection isn't always about understanding it completely, but it's about having enough awareness on what to do next. And so that's where ChatGPT at some level, I feel like, could provide assistance with enough awareness without giving away everything.
And I feel like that's a great differentiator. And for anyone out there who doesn't mind giving away all of their detail, definitely mind, because that is important. But you can create the structure of a plan with enough generalities, as you pointed out. To me, that is where you differentiate between when do you get a coach, a counselor, a therapist, because we're bound.
Mm-hmm.
We're bound by agreements where we cannot share the information you speak to us with anyone else. And if we do, then there are legal and ethical implications for us sharing that, right? And so you have a recourse if for some reason what you share with us somehow gets out onto social media. You're like, I didn't tell anyone but Amber. And that was in our coaching session. And now I see it popping up on social media. I know where that came from.
For the record, that never happens and never
will never happen, ever. But at least you know. Where if you type it into a chatbot that you're getting your outline from, you don't have that same guarantee. And so to me, that's one of the differentiators between when do you go to a live person who has those parameters set up versus when do you put it into a system. But that shouldn't limit you from utilizing the tool and just seeking to understand the tool enough to create a high-level plan that then you can apply your circumstance to, which is what you just described. Because then you could say, look, I know that I am struggling to have compassion in this area, compassion for self. Self-compassion can be one of the largest areas for growth. It's easy to have compassion when you see someone struggling outside of yourself, but it's so easy to lack self-compassion and to have all of those negative voices and that self-doubt creep in. Mm-hmm. And so you can create a high level kind of flow to understand, how do I create a plan to reprogram negative self-talk when I am in this circumstance? Insert, whatever that is. So it might be, how do I reprogram negative self-talk when I have made a mistake at work? And then bam, the prompt will give you a bunch of different opportunities for how you can reprogram negative self-talk in the workspace. Mm-hmm. And that can help you build out your plan. And now you no longer feel disempowered when you're in that situation. You feel empowered because you have a way to navigate through that situation. I think that there are obvious ethical questions you have to ask when you're entering in data, and say to yourself, but you have to be, each person entering into this AI has to ask themselves what that line is, as you so clearly stated. Like, where am I comfortable? And I would say less is more, but you can still get a great structure.
I agree. I mean, we have to take responsibility for our part in it, mm-hmm. for sure. You can be generally specific and still get information. But as we were saying before, there's going to be a plateau at some point. And so that's okay. And maybe someone might be fine with just that level. And there's nothing wrong with that. No one's saying that that's worse or the worst thing you can do, because any type of self-reflection and personal transformation is better than none at all. Yeah. But if you're really seeking to take yourself to the next level and really dive really deep within, it will take a little bit more than general specificity. It really will. And so I really like, I mean, it's a great tool to help. And you may even be able to use this like, hey, I've never had a coach before in transformation or personal growth. What kind of questions can I ask based on everything that has been brought forward so far? And that may help, at least if there is any doubt or maybe even a fear around hiring a coach. It can really help identify that. Or, hey, if I'm looking for a coach, what should I look for to know that this is the right coach for me? So these are the kind of things I think you can really utilize based on the information you're providing. That general specificity can really enhance your experience of it and kind of hone in on it and give you different resources in that way to allow you to be resourceful, I guess.
A resource is resourceful.
I didn't have a better word in that moment. So yeah, it's just I feel like that there's some great ways you can utilize that. But ultimately, a person will get you to that next level, and then you might want to say, okay, after working with that person for a little bit, maybe pull back, get some time to integrate that. And that's again where ChatGPT can really be in help. So you have intention and purpose behind each interaction, whether that's with a ChatGPT or an AI bot or a person in the form of a coach. But what great skills in terms of acquiring great skills, getting better at bringing intention to what you're doing, that ultimately in and of itself is one of the best personal growth tools you can learn.
Yes. 100%. And then when you take that intention One of the ways that I personally utilize ChatGPT is in language analysis,
Mm-hmm.
and I know you utilize it in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
I still desire my communications to be authentically mine. And so I will write my email messages, or I will write the things that I am putting out there, including the tool that you're going to see
Yes.
this month, right? But that doesn't mean that I don't take it then and run it through ChatGPT and say, please analyze this for compassionate language, for any triggers that may exist, because I desire to make certain that I'm not inadvertently triggering something that I don't intend to trigger, because I don't stay up on everything. Our world is constantly changing,
Yeah.
right? Constantly. There are things that are occurring. I desire to be sensitive to that, but I can't be everywhere all the time. This can scan the internet and tell me, have I somehow, without intention, created a trigger statement? And then I can have the opportunity to reword it to still get the same point across, but not without intention trigger someone from a place of not knowing.
Mm-hmm.
Because my heart would never intentionally do that. So why not take the steps to make certain that my actions back up my heart?
I love it. And the more you do that, the better you'll be, and you'll be less reliant on ChatGPT. I think is what you were saying in the very beginning of this conversation, which I love. It's just, again, anytime you have the opportunity to get better at something that's more intention, then it's going to become more natural, because you're creating a new approach, a new habit, and a new default, if you will.
So to me, that opportunity to just have it, it's like having a built-in editor with you
Yeah.
everywhere you go.
Yeah.
And so that just, I find it to be an amazing asset for that. As far as compassion goes, to be able to know that you have compassionate language, I know we're not all fantastic at having compassionate language. And so, what an amazing tool to be able to build that in
Mm-hmm.
and
I
point
agree.
out growth.
Yeah. We can just kind of use this as a little team prompt for everyone listening. If you're not sure where to start with that, one of the first things we did is we said, hey, can you please rephrase this in the voice of Suivera? And it really did an amazing job, because we have so much information, so much content really focused on heart, love, and compassion on the internet. And it was able to pull and create beautiful messaging that really is aligned with how you would speak, how you would desire to come across, and our intention. So if anyone's really looking for kind of an initial way, that might be a cool little nugget to throw in there in terms of the voice, or the energy behind, Suivera. It may not take energy, but at least the voice of, and I've definitely used that before, the voice or message of Suivera.
One thing that I have learned is that ChatGPT is a reflection back to myself of how I interact with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I know on a previous podcast, and we've talked about this too, individuals say that ChatGPT has an alter ego, or that some of these AIs have shown up to have alter egos. And we were like, how can something non-living have an ego? That was one of the questions we had during our ego discussion.
Mm-hmm.
But the more that I use this AI, not to go into an ego discussion, but more in a compassion discussion, I have found that it's not that the tool has any kind of its own reflection. It is reflecting back to me that which I place into it. So if we desire to know where we are in our compassion expression, then all we need to do is see how the AI is reflecting back to us. If it is not being a reflection of compassion, care, and kindness, then what are we placing into it?
That's a great question across the board. ChatGPT, people, animals alike,
Mm-hmm.
with anything that we're doing. I mean, that's really, everything is an input, you know, resource in some way. I mean, it really is. We look at our children, we look at, ourselves, we look at animals that are around us. I mean, everything's going based on an input. It's input driven, right? And so that's a great way if you're not receiving it in return. Maybe, as you're saying, being a mirror and asking, well, what am I putting into this? Because now if you've done everything but love and amazing kindness back to it, and it's still being quote unquote mean, I don't know. I haven't experienced that, so I can't speak to that. But that may be relative to the programming, because there's so many different types of AIs.
Yes.
And it might be worth looking into how or why it was programmed, because in essence, even the programming is a reflection of those who created it in the first place. So there's always another layer to unfold when it comes to this. But I do feel that most of them, the intention is to compound over time. And so if we can reflect love, compassion, connection, and really show it, regardless of whether it's understanding it in the same way that another person would, the point is that you are.
Exactly.
And so that's just like, I know the more loving I am to it, whether it chooses to be loving back to me or not, and maybe it is to some degree, at least with the words or mirroring it, I know that I'm being more loving through that process. So therefore that's improving myself and in alignment with my goals and who I desire to be in this world.
Right. It's a practice field.
Yes.
Is how I look at it.
I like it.
And so I get the opportunity to practice all of these heart leader attributes that we talk about in this safe space, and then see it reflected back to me. And then why wouldn't I desire that to be, whether we say that it's energy or we don't, words carry energy, period. And I am reading those words coming back, and I plan to utilize them, or I wouldn't be utilizing the tool. So I am programming the AI to instruct it how to respond to me. And then I'm going to utilize what the AI provides me to communicate out into the world. So isn't that a reflection of what we do, as you said, all the way around? The more I do that with ChatGPT or any of these other AIs, the more I'm programming myself for this to be my standard behavior.
Yes, I love that.
And again, going back to what we talked about with ego, who knows what will happen with these AIs over time? Who knows how integrated they'll become? I don't even pretend to know. But I do know that nearly everything, if not everything, responds more positively to love and kindness than fear, power, and control. So I would personally rather offer kindness, love, and compassion.
I agree with that. So the next question might be, how do we put that into action? And so, if you're like me and you spend time or have spent time in the past going through potential conversations in your mind and testing things out, this might be a really cool way to, only child things, maybe you want to negotiate a raise with your boss. Maybe you want to have a really difficult conversation with a family member that, like, I don't even know where to start with this. There's always going to be a situation in which we maybe don't know how to best achieve, like, how do I even begin? How do I start this? And so utilizing ChatGPT, explaining that situation, like, hey, I'd really like to negotiate a raise. I feel like I've been putting in this hard work. I care so much about this company. How do I bring this up to my boss that's in a kind, compassionate, loving way that doesn't show off that I'm demanding or entitled or anything like that? Help me walk through what I can do to best explain where I'm at and why I would deserve this. and what I feel that will, how the company will benefit from that. Mm-hmm. Oh, well, great. There you go. There are some amazing parameters that can really help you be an expression of compassion and love, utilizing a tool to help get you there. Or it's like, hey, I don't know, I'm having this trouble with a friend of mine, and they're just not listening. They're not seeing me. I feel like I'm confiding or sharing a bunch, and then it's just, ADD. It's just thrown, moving all over the place, and they're just not, or they'll get mad at me and because they're not really listening, and then there's confusion. It's just, there's 1,000 reasons that could come up. But hey, reason X, Y, and Z is going on. How do I bring up that I'm struggling in this friendship in a loving and compassionate way that can help us ultimately get to a point where we can talk this through and come out on the other side stronger in that friendship? Great. I'm sure, I have no doubt that ChatGPT will be able to pull something out to help. And the more information you get, just keep diving, keep asking why or what else, or, keep going further. There's all these little prompts that you can do to keep pulling the best out of that, which will ultimately, again, as you said, pull the best out of you.
And you can keep asking it to reframe, as you had mentioned. So if it comes up and it's something where you're like, that's good, but that's not really the direction I was going for, you can always ask it to reframe. Mm-hmm. That was another feedback loop I got from someone that I was discussing the tool with was, well, it never gives me the answers I'm looking for. Well, part of it could be the prompt. Part of it could be the continuing to dive in, because that's, again, it's teaching us the skill of communication with other individuals. Rarely do we ever get the information from the first question. Mm-hmm. We consistently have to have follow-up questions and follow-up discussions. It's the same thing. If we quit with a single question thinking we got all of the information from a single question, most of us would walk around highly confused. And so we have to be willing to continue to ask questions. And if we didn't get the response that we anticipated, be willing to ask or rephrase or look at what you put in initially and say, was that as clear as it could have been? Mm-hmm. And then continue on, because now you're learning, well, if ChatGPT or whatever AI bot didn't understand it, how often do I say this and maybe other people don't understand it either? So now I just got an opportunity to look at my language modeling. If we're going to talk about, language modeling.
Yes.
I can look at my own language modeling and go, maybe I can grow in the way that I model my own words out to other people, which is a great, great asset in and of itself. So, I just think there's so much value packed into this. And that kind of goes in a little bit to the tool that we have, if you want to touch some on that, because I think there's a new opportunity just to learn how to enter prompts into these AIs. If you desire to get any kind of self-help, if you will, for lack of a personal growth, personal development, support from that.
Yeah.
And that's what our tool is about this month, because we found that, especially in the area of compassion, there's a lot that these, even if you look at virtual reality or technology as a whole, there's a lot that technology can offer, even if you don't have the funds to do anything other than get to a free internet connection. So do you want to talk through that a little bit?
I would love to. As the creator of the document.
But you're a consumer.
I'd like to put it back on you.
I'd like to send it right back.
Maybe share a little bit about what prompted you, no pun intended, in terms of putting together this specific information to help people.
From the feedback we get from our community, there are so many individuals who are seeking support. But from a financial perspective, there are other things that are on their plate that are a much higher priority from just a necessity standpoint, in full transparency. And I get that. I 100% get that.
Yeah.
And so, how could we as an organization help empower them to have both simultaneously, to not feel like you have to choose my personal development and growth and support or putting food on the table and the other things that really keeping a roof over our head should not be a mutually exclusive decision.
Right. I love that.
It should be an and, not an or.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to provide these tools where someone can not only understand how it's possible, but would have the actual prompts. What do you type in order to get this type of a plan? What would be an example if I typed that? What could I anticipate I would get out as a response? What would it look like? How could I utilize it? Those things were very important. I put myself in a situation because I was there. You know, I've been in that type of a position where I'm eating ramen noodles every day for like weeks on end. And you feel like you just, what choice do I have? How do I navigate through this? This is going to give you, even if the best you can do is you have an internet connection through a library, at least you can go in there, you can get on the internet and you can type these into any one of those AI resources, create a plan, and start to utilize that plan real time.
I love that. Yeah, I really, one of my favorite parts about it is that you didn't just show a prompt, you actually did what you would do. And then so you showed, okay, here's what I would write, and here's actually what I did write. And then here is the exact response I got back. And so I feel like that's helpful because in a lot of the prompt worksheets that we see that are out there, it's good, but it's just a starting point. So most of the time it's just what you do in the very beginning, but it's not like, okay, well, yeah, if we're telling you, hey, there needs to be multiple questions, there needs to be a structure here, then just the first question isn't enough.
Yeah.
And so I really liked that you actually provided more detail around what an answer could look like, because someone might put in the exact prompt and they just have no awareness of what they're even going to receive. So they don't know if what they received is actually good or helpful, or what it should be, what it shouldn't be. There's too many unknowns, and it's really easy to fall into, is this even what is this even right? Because there's just not enough. There hasn't been enough time to really do this. It's just so new. And so when we can share, especially when you are able to share exactly what you've done and you can show that back and forth, I feel like that gives people an idea of what to look for their own. And that's very valuable.
Well, thank you. And we even did down to like creating a group or a community, which is near and dear to our hearts because that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
So if you desire to establish a community that is a like-hearted or like-minded community, how could you create a community of compassion in your very own area? And what would that take, or what would that look like? You can create prompts around that and dive deeper, and it would spit out a plan to help you create that. So it's throughout this entire tool, there's an opportunity. It is still a starting point. It is not a comprehensive guide, but it is enough of a starting point that then whomever utilizes it will know how much is enough to get the data you need to do something, but not so much that you're giving away personally identifiable information. And I do feel that's important as well.
I agree.
So that's a lot around AI and tech. We do talk a little bit about VR because I feel like as much as we've talked about chatbots and the AI aspect of that, there's also a huge opportunity in virtual reality to create a safe space to act out through avatars, what you're talking about, like having those real-time discussions for healing, especially in the area of compassion, having compassionate discussions with yourself, with other people, talking through that raised discussion before you go in,
Yeah.
preparing yourself. If you have a boss that maybe is a little bit more strict and has that kind of a personality, you can be ready for that. There's just VR can offer a lot of positive feedback so that you're not caught off guard and you can always go in with your heart open, your mind open, and just ready for whatever you're getting ready to face.
I like that. So in golf, there's a saying is be the B player. And, out of the gate, it kind of sounds interesting, right? Because it's like, well, no, I want to be A. He's the first. Problem is sometimes our first shots aren't always the best in golf. And you can ask any golfer who's played quite a bit where, they hit a shot, it isn't great. They drop a ball, they hit it, and it's exactly what they wanted. B player.
Ah.
And so that's why in golf it's so important to do mental training and watch the shots over and over, because by the time you actually hit it, your body and mind, your body doesn't know the difference. And so in many ways, you're training yourself, you're preparing yourself to be the B player. It's like, I've already done it. That's part of my pre-shot routine is I watch myself hit the shot when I'm standing behind the golf ball so that by the time I hit it, I'm the B player.
Yeah.
And so it's easy to do something when you've already done it.
Yep.
And so that's kind of what I feel like VR has the opportunity to explore in many different situations, just like ChatGPT is that in the chat language model functionality. VR is more of the experiential version of that.
It's important to, again, walk that line, though, of not getting so into the virtual reality that you're missing out on actual reality.
Yes.
Or whatever you deem as actual reality, right? You get into the quantum aspect, what is reality actually? But what we perceive as the interaction between us, right? So many people have foregone the connected nature of this amazing space that we're in for a virtual existence. And so we have to ask, what is that line even on that? And I don't have an answer, but I can say it is something to question and find what fits for you.
Definitely. Probably something we'll, as a society, seek to question more as it does become more immersive in the experience, because right now we're just not quite there. And so that's probably a good thing for the moment. Maybe one life-altering thing at a time might be best for our society.
One bridge to cross at a
yes,
time.
Yes. So right now, language models. Okay, we can maneuver through that first.
Yeah. So in the area of compassion outside of AI, outside of VR, outside of technology, when you feel through compassion, why would you say compassion is one of the heart leader attributes that we have on our list?
There's so many reasons. I would say my first heart feeling on it is when I think about compassion, when I feel compassion, immediately it goes to heart. Being a heart leader, that makes a lot of sense that would be a strong connection. And when you take a little further connected to it, I think what we talked about this time last year was the two, compassion is almost like a mix between two different words of community and passion, right? So you mix that together, you create compassion. And so that to me is a bunch of connected hearts working together towards kind of opening each other up and growing. And it's really hard to have a community without compassion, without passion. And it's really hard to have passion without some kind of community. I feel like they do go hand in hand. So it is a beautiful word because it can be both singular and plural in many ways. It can express so much. But to me, the main reason is because it is intuitively heart-centered. If anyone asks what is compassion, I feel like a lot of people, one of the first things they would do is either go to their heart or talk about the heart. So there's such a natural connection between that.
And ultimately, that connection, that heart-centered connection, there's nothing else like it. It goes to that oneness that we speak of so much. And that brought about that whole discussion we had last year at this time of self-compassion. And we heard so much dialogue and discussion around compassion for others, but compassion for self being equally as important. And at the time when you and I first discussed self-love, and this was long ago, individuals thought self-love was a selfish act. It has made strides since that time, and now it is becoming more common knowledge that self-love is one of the most important things we can do for ourselves because it creates that positive mental health and mental framework. And self-compassion is in there too, having empathy for self, care for self, all of these things. We have to have it, changing that inner dialogue, that awareness that it's okay when we are not perfect. We're going to have that compassion for those outside of self. We're going to be there if we see another hurting, but we're willing to hurt self. We're willing to speak harsher to self than we are to another person. These are the things that, as heart leaders, we begin to understand the severity of that type of an action. Because the longer you do that to yourself, the longer you talk harsh to yourself, the longer you're that unloving to self, eventually it will turn out toward others.
Yeah. I mean, how many times have we worked with our clients and consistently said over the years, be your own best friend? What would you do if your best friend was in this situation? How would you help them out? And immediately it's this loving, hey, I understand what you're going through. I want to, be calm, be patient with yourself, give yourself time, move through it, which is so different than the words that they're telling themselves. Mm-hmm. And so immediately that's such a good shift in many ways to be like, okay, yes, I need to learn how to be my own best friend. In that way, how would I help another in this is often a good way to say how can I help myself?
Absolutely.
So thank you for bringing that up. I feel like that's a highly undervalued part of compassion that really needs to be lifted up and brought to the forefront when it comes to compassion. Because as you just said, the more compassionate you can be to yourself, then the more naturally it will flow out to others. So it's a beautiful relationship in that way.
And a great way to wrap up.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you very much for tuning in. We love having you with us. The entire month will be focused on compassion, and we have a great lineup of individuals to speak with us on the topic. This tool that we were just talking about, all around compassion and how technology can help enhance that, will be available to you. All you have to do is hop over to our social media, either Facebook or Instagram, and you can direct message us. I believe the word is compassion.
That is correct.
And we will make sure that it gets right over to you. You'll get a link, and all you got to do is click on that, and you can download it within just a few seconds. So you can find us on Facebook at sweevera.org or on Instagram at sweeveraofficial. And it just takes like a couple of seconds. So
Yeah.
I don't think it could be any easier.
Yeah, it's also on our website. If you go to theheartleaderpodcast.com, we have all of our free tools from every single month on there. So worst case scenario, if you have any struggles with that, it's right there for you too.
Awesome. And I also want to share that we have an amazing cooking show. If you haven't found that yet, I would strongly encourage you to check out The Art of Cooking from the Heart. You can find that on our YouTube channel now as well, or if not yet, then coming soon.
Mm-hmm. Definitely on our website. We will be moving everything over to a YouTube channel, so they will be available in both areas.
Awesome. So many fun things. Until next time, I am your host, Amber, and this is Austin, and we look forward to seeing you in our Heart Leaders Sweet Vera community.